So from time to time, you might have had the experience of getting a song caught in your head, where maybe you hear a song or somebody mentions a song, and before you know it, it's kind of background music in your day. And when I was growing up and started getting interested in NLP, I would get really curious about a phenomena like that, and curious about how I might go about changing that if I did get a song stuck in my head. And so I'll talk about that a little bit. But more importantly, it's one thing if there's a song that's playing and it's on a loop in your head, and that may not be a problem unless you really don't like that song. But what can be problematic from time to time is when we internalize perhaps something somebody said, or a not so well-meaning message that we got from someone else or from a teacher or a parent. And sometimes these things can be playing in the background, and sometimes it's hard to dislodge them. When we'll get a certain message or incantation or negative belief, or whatever you want to call it, stuck in your head. So I wanted to offer a couple strategies for dealing with that. And again, if you hear somebody's words and they bounce off of you, then that's fantastic. But very often it can set up a little loop that's not productive. When I was growing up, a teacher said to me, you're not responsible, or you're irresponsible. And so what that set up for years was part of me saying, yes, I am responsible. And another part of me kind of going, maybe they're right, and feeling the criticism. And it was just back and forth and back and forth. So that's the type of thing that I'm talking about here. The first thing that you can try, if you have one of these incantations that you really don't feel is useful, I would say the first thing to check is something that we've talked about many times, which is positive intention, which was, okay, maybe the person said something that you're perceiving as hurtful. And was there some positive intention, something that they were trying to do with that utterance? And we might not agree with it, but very often if you can understand what the positive intention was, then it can let a little bit of the sting out of it, perhaps, and you can hopefully try to address the intention as opposed to the utterance. So in the case of this teacher, I felt that it was unfair at my age, and how dare they say something like that about me. But if I really look at it, I think they were trying their best to point out to me that there was something that I wasn't doing in my life, and that it was important that I learned to be responsible, whatever that meant to them. If I were to talk to them now, I would ask them, tell me more. I mean, if I was very centered, I'd tell me more. I'd like to be responsible. How? But in any case, by understanding their positive intention, I have an opportunity to let this dialogue play out, perhaps in a new way. So it's not lodged in my thinking as this endless loop that's not really serving me. So that's the first thing that you can try. Explore the positive intention. And if there is a positive intention, internalize the message if it's something that you want to take. And if not, just say, okay, I've had enough of this and I'll let that go. Now, sometimes these phrases or words may have some sort of emotional or physiological sting to them. When I would hear irresponsible, it would actually feel bad in my body. I would feel uncomfortable. So there's the word itself in that case, or it may be the phrase, has a charge to it. It isn't neutral. It's not like somebody somebody says the word dictionary, I have a neutral response to that. But when somebody said irresponsible, it would sort of fire up my whole nervous system in a way that I wasn't enjoying. And one thing that you can explore with this is this idea of sort of disappearing a word. And I was watching one of my recent favorite shows, Ted Lasso, and the character is saying a word again and again and again, and the other character says to him, "Oh, did the word lose its meaning?" And he said, "Yeah." So you can actually do this, and sometimes it's useful to just keep repeating the word again and again and again until the meaning or the charge flattens out. And sometimes you got to stay with it for a while, put it on a loop, but intentionally go after it. And one thing that I recommend is sort of bring a mindfulness to it, like really listen to it. What does it sound like? What are the syllables like? And then you can actually play with, what if you say it slowly? What if you really stretch it out? So it's in slow motion, like irresponsible. And if you start to play with the way in which you're hearing it, very often it will change our internal physiological reaction, which in NLP we call that an anchor, in this case a negative or unpleasant anchor. So you can slow down the word, you can listen for the space around the word. What are the sounds around that word? Another thing that can really help it is, what if you change the tone of voice of that phrase? So in the case of this teacher, instead of hearing that teacher, I might imagine that teacher saying it when they inhaled helium and their voice is high, like a cartoon character. You're irresponsible. And again, it shifts the internal response to it. Or put it in the voice of one of your favorite actors or favorite friends, and very often that can change your response. You can turn up the volume, you can turn down the volume, and you can imagine playing it backwards. Like if you were running a tape machine backwards, what would it sound like reversed? And speed it up. We slowed it down. What if you played it at like light speed? There's nothing. Very often, if you stay with it for a while, you can get to the point where you can hear that phrase again and it doesn't have that charge. So what I like about that is in the past, when that particular phrase had a certain charge to it, if somebody said that, even if they weren't talking about me, it would sort of put me on edge. But once I play with it for a while and sort of flatten out any response to it, now I can hear it and I can actually really check out what is the person saying without this strong reaction. And one other way you can play with it auditorially is changing the emphasis. So you could say irresponsible, irresponsible. And by playing with those different emphases, very often that will let the charge out of it. So I hope you'll have some fun if you find anything that gets sort of lodged in your head. And back to the tune, I won't go into that in great detail. The two things that I found work best are, one, listen to another tune, or if I don't like a particular tune in my head, I'm a very auditory person at times, I will intentionally pick another song and change the radio station to the other song, stay with it for a moment, and then I'm there. And the other is kind of what I mentioned with the word or phrase. I'll try to listen to the space around that thing. So I'll let the volume come down a little bit, and then I'll begin to listen. Okay, what are some of the other sounds in the area, so that at least this can drop into the background. So hope you enjoy those, and talk to you next time.